Alright, so we first want to start off with asking you guys if you have any stereotypes when you think of Native Americans. Does anybody? Can anybody think of any?
Don't be afraid. If you're thinking of it, someone else probably is.
One person.
Go. Very wise.
Yes.
They have powwows.
Powwows? Okay.
They wear like the headdresses and like dance around fires.
Okay. So we're going to start with language. So
Alright, so Ya'ate, welcome, or hello in Navajo. This is one of the first things that we learned about when we were in the Navajo Nation, was about the background of their language. And we learned that it was a spoken language first. They didn't start writing it down until about the mid-19th century. It is the Athabascan branch of the Na-Dene language family. They only have 4 vowels in their alphabet as compared to ours, which is A, E, I, and O. And they don't have F, P, Q, R, U, or V. So as you can see in this picture over here is a picture of their alphabet. We also were told that the number of Navajo speakers over the years has greatly declined. They have about 169,000 as according to the 2013 census of people who actually speak Navajo. And they have an ethnic population of about 266,000. So what we learned was that it's basically kind of like our culture. So like I'm German, but I don't speak German. And it's become an issue over the years that these people are Navajo, and they no longer speak Navajo or understand Navajo. In schools, they were ridiculed if they spoke Navajo, and the teachers forced them to speak English. And so it kind of became part of their culture that they started losing over time. And they're actually starting to try and bring it back in the schools now. They're actually teaching Navajo in the colleges and in the schools, trying to get some of their culture back.
All right, government. Just go back for a second. This is the Great Seal of the Navajo Nation. It was all over the place when we were there. It has a lot of symbolism to it, okay? I'm not going to go into all the symbolism, but this isn't just a bunch of animals, mountains, and shapes put in a circle. This means something to the Navajo people. We'll get into that later. So we spent a week there, and spending a week in the Navajo Nation does not make me an expert in government. Okay, so this is just what I have learned from them and from the presentations that they gave to us. So just remember that I'm no expert. You might have some questions for me. I might be able to answer them, but there's a good possibility that I'm not going to be able to, so please keep that in mind when you're asking questions. So to start, the area of the Navajo Nation. If you look at this picture of the United States, they're right in the corner of 4 states, and it's about the size of West Virginia. So their whole nation is about the size of a whole state. And it was formed in 1923, but they've been living there for way longer than we've been here. And they're made up of 110 chapters across 4 states. So their chapters are sort of like their counties. And the 4 states that they're across are Arizona, Mexico, Colorado, and Utah. And the population is around 250,000, and 96% are full Navajo. So this is just how the government operates. The Navajo people's tradition of government is rooted in their oral history. They don't really have written history. It's all spoken and passed along through traditions. So I thought that was really cool. You think of the United States history, and everything is documented. We document their thoughts, like it's crazy. And they talk about it, and it's all oral, spoken in Navajo. And to hold high office, one must be able to speak fluent Navajo. And honestly, that it's a big thing, because a few years ago, they actually had someone who wanted to run, but the person who wanted to run for a high office couldn't speak Navajo. So they didn't put him in office. It was just one of the biggest qualifications is speaking fluent Navajo. And it's important because they really want to hold on to their cultural roots. And so there's this actual growing divide between people who want a culturally rooted government and a younger generation who want a more progressive version of government. Because this individual, he actually was an engineer, he was a lawyer, And he was really, really smart, and he had all these great ideas. But because he didn't speak fluent Navajo, he didn't get elected into high office. So there's actually a growing divide between the older generation who want that culturally rooted government and the younger generation who wants that progressive, new thinking government. And so some other cool facts. The discovery of oil on the reservation in the 1920s prompted for a more systematic version of government. So in the 1920s is when they started adopting their government, which they have today, which is honestly really similar to our version of government, as a judiciary branch, an executive, and a legislative. They use a representative democracy, so they have 88 delegates, just like how we have delegates who go to the House of Representatives, the Senate, and stuff like that, who represent the 110 chapters at big council meetings. And when council is in session, they usually speak fluent Navajo. And it's considered the largest and most sophisticated form of Native American government in the United States, so that's really cool. And the Navajo citizens are respected as American citizens and are allowed to vote in U.S. elections. So that's a really cool fact I thought too.
Right, the clan system. This is a really big part of their culture. Every time we met someone from the Navajo Nation, whether it was a presentation that we were going to, whether it was while we were doing community service, they would always introduce themselves. So this is like a format that you would follow. So they follow a matrilineal system, so basically any child that is born belongs to the mother's clan. And that's really important to be able to introduce yourself from your maternal and your paternal clans, because basically it's really important for you to marry outside of your mother or your father's clan, because you're considered to be part of that clan. So whether you're blood related or clan related, so if your mom is from one clan, your dad is from another clan, you're basically anyone from that clan, whether they're your blood related cousin or brother or sister, they're still considered a part of your family. So it's really important to marry outside of that. And Navajo children are born for the father's clan. So as it shows here, hello, my name is so-and-so. I'm from this clan, born for a certain clan, and so on and so forth. So Trevor, do you want to give an example?
So for that example right there, my name, it would say hello or Ya'ate. My name is Trevor. I am Scottish, born for Italian. My Che is Irish, and my Nelly is Scot-Irish.
Does anyone want to try that? Like, because you know what your nationality is. It could be your nationality, or it could be the different sorts of things. It wouldn't work for me because I was that was something that I realized coming from Malawi. We have tribes as well, but you're allowed to marry someone who's in the same clan or the same tribe as you. So that's something that's different, and it's something that would be different in different tribes. So there was the Hopi tribe, which was kind of close to where we were staying. And they have different clans, different systems as well, so it really does differ.
Oh, actually, for this bullet right here, where it says it's very important to marry outside of your clan. So if you were to go out and ask your mother if you could marry a certain girl, and you told your mother that it was in the same clan as your mother, you'd be dating or marrying your mother. That's just how their clan system works. And if you went out and the girl you were looking at, or a guy for that matter, was in the same clan as your father, then you'd be marrying your father. So that's not really good. So that's why you
So this is just to give you an idea of how it works. So whenever you introduce yourself, she, that's me, and then you introduce your mother's clan first, and then your father's clan, and then so on and so forth. But basically, your clan is whatever your mother's clan is. So your mother's clan is the same as your mother's mother's clan and your mother's mother's clan. So it's kind of like a line that you follow. And these are just, the different descriptions of like Shitsi is younger brother, and it's just to give you an idea of the kinship system, so kin. And as we were talking about, the clan system extends your family tree. So you're not just you, your brother, your sister, it's also your clan brother, your clan sister, your clan uncle, your clan aunt. And it makes it difficult for you to find a partner. Like I said, you know, there would be a clan brother, clan sister, so on and so forth. And children are taught this from an early age. Even within the school system, one of the presenters that was talking to us about their language explained that in class she would be like, oh, so I'm from this clan, what clan are you from? So everybody knows what clan they're from, whether they're Navajo or Anglo or Caucasian, whatever it is that they're, whatever place it is that they're from, they're able to understand where they're from. And if they're from a similar clan as the teacher, they might be like, oh, so you're my mother, or you're my aunt, or my uncle, depending on which clan it is that they're from. So that really helps people to identify which clan they should, you know, which person they should be thinking about dating or not dating. And they really want to keep it, you know, it's a really small population, about 200,000 of the Navajo, and they really want to keep it, you know, they don't want to separate too much, but because it's so difficult, like with the clan system, they try to, it's becoming more acceptable to marry outside of your tribe. And so, yeah.
Okay, so this is my part. While we were in the Navajo Nation, it was really interesting to see a lot of cultural differences. And that's really interesting, especially because it is in the U.S. territory. So I just want to share with you guys today. I mean, I know you came with the tacos, but there's some cool lessons that I learned on the reserve that I want to share with you guys. Okay, so first of all, the Navajo people have this really cool saying, and it's that we are all five-fingered people. And if you look at the blue hand up here, it's actually like a symbol of their culture. And it stands for equality. So the Navajo people believe that no matter your race, no matter your religion, no matter your sexuality, or your social class, you're all equal. Nothing makes you greater than me. And I think that's really important to think about because here at home, I think that there are a lot of issues with acceptance of other cultures. Because we are the melting pot, we sort of want to think that what I was taught is the right way, and we sort of judge other people for who they are. So just an important lesson that I learned. Also, it's interesting to see that the Navajo people are really rich in their culture. So, for example, at the Hills High School that we stayed at, it was a boarding school. All the students that went there were Navajo. They had their own curriculum, so they would learn about the Navajo history in America. And also they could take Navajo, as Brittany said, as their second language. So they're very immersed and constantly reinforced by who they are and where they came from. Whereas whenever it was time for us to talk about our clans, as students, some of us maybe didn't even know our heritage. Whereas some of us knew our heritage, but whenever we were asked, like, oh, what are the traditions, we couldn't tell you. So it was just very interesting looking at the pride between the two different cultures and where you came from. Another thing is that the Navajo actually lease their property, so like where they live, from the U.S. government. And this is because of the treaty that they signed years ago. And it's because it was explained to us that the Navajo people don't believe in the ownership of property of the land. They believe in living amongst the land. So you graze off the land and then you give back to it by taking care of your environment. It was just interesting to learn about today how strict we are about property and the borderlines that we live within. Also, the Navajo people live a very simple life. It was very relaxed there compared to here. I feel like today, in our society, we really focus on those day-to-day schedules, and it's very fast-paced, whereas for the Navajo people, it was very relaxed. They're not stressed. They're not as stressed, I would say, as we put the pressure on ourselves. It was also very interesting to see, like for example, there were no big shopping malls, there were no modern housing plans, and they really just lived simply amongst the land. And you can see here, this is Mr. Cavatoni's ranch. You can just see how pretty it is, but this is where they live, just this nice little house, and then every day that is spent outside on their property, taking care of their property. So, another cool thing is that the Navajo people really appreciate art, which I thought was really interesting. People literally, their profession is making like handmade jewelry, pottery, baskets, and moccasins, which Lindsay will talk to you about. But it's really different to our culture, where a profession is seen as something that you have to go to college for. You have to create innovative ideas and be efficient. It's just really cool to see that they have value in the arts. And in schools, for example, the STEM classes are pushed for way more than the arts. So I just thought that was interesting to compare them. And lastly, and most importantly, a lesson I learned from the Navajos, they have this important saying, which is take care of yourself. So in our culture today, usually we like to put things like our profession first, and then maybe our families, and then maybe ourselves last. So very often we ignore things like issues or things that are bothering us. And that Navajo people think that you need to take time to take care of yourself first, and then take care of others. So it's just something really important to think about. We have to take care of ourselves properly in modern day culture.
So I'm going to start with basket weaving. We had presentations on 2 of the arts and a couple other presentations on government and stuff like that. So basket weaving is commonly known as wedding baskets. They are beautiful. As you can see, like down here in the corner, the gentleman that was presenting was showing us how he makes his baskets and how they're traditionally made. So to make them, you have to have good feelings and thoughts. You can't be angry and you can't be upset with somebody, or you can't be stressed. You have to have good feelings. They're made of sumac trees, I believe I'm saying that right. The leaves give the black color, and the berries on the tree give the burgundy color in the basket. So they use every part of the tree. You also can't touch it. Not allowed to pick up the basket if you're on your period. 4 days after you hunt, 4 days after a clan member dies, and you have to wait after the full moon if a blood relative dies. So basically, Melissa was telling us how she had to make her own basket when she was in college, and she was really stressed for time, and because you can't pick it up when these things are happening. So she was worried that she wouldn't get her assignment done on time. So that was just another lesson on showing us that if you don't stress about it and you don't worry about it, you are able to do it and you are able to accomplish a task. So on the sumac trees, they have male reeds and female reeds. The male reeds make a dull-colored basket, and the female reeds make a shiny and bright-colored basket, which I thought was really cool to see the differences in it. And he said that sometimes the baskets are made with both to symbolize equality and also like transgender and lesbians and gays. The male baskets are also made clockwise, while the female baskets are made counterclockwise, which I thought was pretty cool because I thought they were all made the same way.
Can I just say that making these baskets is ridiculously hard. Like, he splits the reeds with his teeth, and they made several of us, including me and Lauren, and I think Ashley, give up and try to split the reeds with our mouths. There's no pictures, it was embarrassing. It was so hard.
And a reed is one of these like little branches right here, so.
Yeah, trying to split one of those into 3 even pieces without ripping off the bark is not easy. So they have a lot of talent.
The next one was moccasin making. They're made of 2 different hides. The bottom is cowhide, while the top is deer hide. He mentioned to us that the deer hide is usually green tanned. And the deer hide is dyed to make that certain color. So I don't know if you can see the different colors in moccasin as he's pointing to. He also makes the moccasins by hand. He mentioned to us that you can't just say, oh, I'm a size 10, and he can make it. No, you have to come out, show, or give measurements of your foot to make it the best. He also said that it's better to make somebody else's shoes than your own. It's easier, and I'm not sure why about that, but this style, the leather goes higher up, closer to your knee if you're single and available, and the shorter the moccasin means you're married. Hoop dancing, I think I can speak for everybody that this was awesome. We were unexpecting this, and he just showed up one night and we're like, we have a surprise for you all. So he danced for us. The hoops that he danced with represent the never-ending circle of life, and he gave us a lesson on that as well. Hoops are traditionally never picked up with your hands while you're dancing, so he never bent down to pick up the hoop while he was dancing. The healers and holy men will sometimes use the hoop in many ceremonies, and also hoop dancing will be used in some ceremonies. Dancers create their own dances as well as keep the traditional dances for the ceremonies. And many of the dancers involve symbols and different things we recognize as well as some things we didn't.
Alright, so I'm going to talk about the service learning, which is one of the main reasons that we went out there to help the Navajo people. But a little bit of the definition of what service learning is a teaching and a learning strategy that integrates meaningful community service with instruction and reflection to enrich the learning experience, teach civic responsibility, and strengthen the communities. We were in charge of 4 projects. The first one was the outhouses, which was Trevor's special project.
I don't have great stories, but I think I have a pretty good one. So we showed up. It would have been Saturday, did a little bit of touristy stuff in Sedona, and then we drove into Tuba City is where we stayed, and we met Melissa that night. And one of the first questions she asked is if anybody knew how to use power tools. And I raised my hand, and a couple other kids raised their hand, and that was it. I'm like, what was the point of that? So later on that night, we were having dinner with Melissa, which was the site director, and Mr. Cavatoni, which we worked on his ranch for the 3 days. And out of the blue, she said, okay, so outhouse work, Trevor, you're going to be doing that. And I'm like, what do you mean? And she's like, well, I'm putting you in charge of the outhouse. You build it however you want. We have nothing to go off of. I have 2x4s and plywood for you. So I was very pleased and enthusiastic about getting that opportunity and ability to lead a crew. So the first day of service learning, we showed up, and like she said, there was a pile of 2x4s and plywood laying on the ground. And there was another outhouse pre-built that has been sitting there for a few years, and that's what I based all my measurements off of. As you can see, the height of it in the front was 88 inches, the height in the back was 78, so you have the slope on the roof for water runoff. The width was 44, the depth was 48 inches. Completely built from scratch, had no prints. Me and the advisor from Du Bois just took out a piece of scratch paper and wrote the measurements down on it, and that's what we based our design off of. I feel like it turned out great because, like I said, there was no prints, very square. There was a slight cut made out of the door, but I'm not going to get into that. So the purpose of the outhouses. Most Navajo people are not fortunate enough to have running water. Melissa does not have running water or electricity in her house. She's in the process of doing that. She's been on the waiting list for, what, 7 years, I believe?
She's had the lane for 5, and I think she's been trying for 3 years to get the running water.
So you can see it's pretty difficult for them. Mr. Cavatoni, on the other hand, is very lucky because he has a spring running off the top of his cliffside. So he has a receptacle pond, and only that water is ran to the sink. All showers and restrooms time is taken outside, which is the need for the outhouses.
You can't tell Trevor's incredibly proud of this outhouse.
It was
Very
very
funny for
pictures.
us to watch this whole experience unfold as group leaders, so.
You have a picture of it.
Yeah, there's a
Yeah.
couple in there. So one of the other things that we worked on were the hogans, which is the traditional Navajo houses on dirt floor. John was one of the ones that really worked on it. If you want to tell a little bit about the shaving of the logs.
Yeah, so we had these giant piles of logs, and what we would do is we would take these logs and start to shave them because we just wanted to shave off all the bark. And, you'd think that'd take an hour and stuff. It took us 2 days. So, Mr. Capitone, two logs, 2 days. And Mr. Capitone, he walks over and he's like, yeah, I can do one of those in about half an hour. And I'm like, whoa. So, yeah, it took us 2 days, but shaving the logs really is, I honestly thought it was an aesthetic thing, but it's not an aesthetic thing. It's really part of the tradition. It's really, you do some self-reflection. You're shaving the log for 6 hours straight. And, the first hour it's just like, this is fine. And then the second hour it's like, my arms are starting to hurt. And the third and fourth hour, you're really starting to do some self-reflection. And everyone who was just shaving the log didn't want to give up. Like, people would eat and they would say, okay, you guys are done for the day. But when people were done eating, they would go right to the logs and start shaving them, man. Just because it was a fun experience and you wouldn't really realize that. And so we have the process here. It's constructed with 5 major poles following a talking god's instructions. The poles are placed at a ground base on where they come from. And the entrance to a hogan is always facing the east. I thought that was really cool. It's always facing the east. And there's a meaning behind the post. The east end represents bread. The west end represents abalone. South represents turquoise, and north obsidian. So that's a little bit about the hogan. And I hope we got some pictures of some.
Yeah.
They look really cool.
So this is Trevor's outhouse.
As you can see, each side, one side's built out of a frame, so you have 4 2x4s, and the second side, and then it's just connected by a simple 2x6 on the top and on the bottom.
He's
And
so
then-
proud.
The love of his outhouse, if you can't tell that.
He's hugging it.
Yeah.
Mr. Cavatoni put
Who
up
dug
a
the
challenge.
hole?
What's that?
Who dug the hole?
Me and Corinne.
One of them. Me and the guys we were working on that.
Sorry.
No, that's okay.
Mine and Corinne's was better, but sure.
Yeah, you built too.
Yeah.
It's important.
And then this is a little bit of the hogan. This is what the finished inside of one of them is. There's 2 different hogans, the male and the female. The female is the ceremony, where the male is the one that they live in. Okay, so one of the other tasks that we had was the goat corral. It was, 4 or 5 feet of piled up of 20 years of goat and sheep feces. And it was a great time. We had to dig down as much of the goat extract as we could so that he can use it for the fertilizer for all of his crops on the land so that they can eat throughout the summer and everything else. Me, Billy, and Brittany spent a lot of time with the Du Bois people there, and I think all 3 of us spent all 3 days at the goat corral, which you wouldn't think we would volunteer to stay there, but we actually had a good time. I don't know if either of you want to talk about it.
I can give it a shot. So let's see. Yeah, it was about what you would expect out of having to dig out a goat corral. The idea was to get at least 3 feet down for him to have a substantial amount to use as fertilizer. And I think we all stuck it out because we developed a good system. And plus, before we even got to digging out the corral, we had to take down the fence, and that took 2.5 hours because you had to, because it was really in there,
I would say I went over to help the goat corral for 5 minutes. I had a mask on it, and I almost threw away my mask 4 times. And I was the
only good for 5 minutes. How they did this for 3 days, I am not really sure, because I could only stick it out for.
In my opinion, the mask made it harder to
Yeah.
breathe. So I just kind of took it off after like 20 minutes and stuck it out.
You just kind of were okay with getting goop poop flung at you and in your hair and a little bit in my eye, but it's okay. I survived.
Yeah, once you work on it for about 20 minutes, the smell just no longer bothers you. I did leave my shoes in the garbage there, though.
Yeah,
I was not bringing them back on the plane. I mean, we had fun. We had fun. We built relationships. We made a lot of friends with the Du Bois campus, scooping poop, because we had some very in-depth conversations.
And a lot of puns were made.
Yes.
Yeah, lots of
It was
poop
so
puns
easy.
were made.
Couldn't help it.
And one of the last ones that we worked on was the sweat lodge, which we also got to experience later. Lindsay and Ashley and Waddy all worked on it, so I don't know if you want to talk about the process.
Yeah, we started out with like a 6-foot circle and, well, a 6-foot string, and you can make a 12-foot sweat lodge, which can be made any different size as long as it's a circle. So we dug holes with some post hole diggers and put the willow saplings in and stretched them down to make the actual like roundness of the sweat lodge. So we bent them 1 and 2 like just in a certain way, and all of them have to be done a certain way. So the meaning behind it is a chance for the Navajo people to relax and release their toxins.
And this is a picture of us at the goat corral. I think Billy got attacked by a ram.
Yeah.
We were standing in
The
there.
closest to danger of all the animals I could have seen in Arizona was a ram charging at me. I didn't see a single snake, but there was a ram.
And there's pictures of them working on the sweat lodge and what the finished products were.
This is the one the women actually sweat in, down here in the left corner. We fit our entire campus and Du Bois campus. We crammed in there with hot rocks, but it was so good, and we enjoyed it so much.
And the one in the corner right here, that was the one that was made before we got there. That one is considered a permanent sweat lodge, while the one that we made was only a temporary one. So while we were with the Navajo, they allowed us to participate in one of their most sacred traditional ceremonies, and we were so lucky that they were open to us and they allowed us to participate. And one of the things that Melissa said when we were in our sweat lodge is, what happens in sweat lodge stays in sweat lodge. So why do we do the sweat lodge? The Navajo do the sweat lodge for prayer and for purifying themselves, and it's also a traditional ceremony for boys when they come of age. So the people who can only participate in sweat lodge are those who have reached puberty, and the men and women must sweat separately. And the method of how the sweat lodge is actually ran inside, it always depends on the leader of the sweat lodge and the type of sweat. So the girls had, the boys had a dry sweat, and we just had
It was wet sweat.
wet sweat, I guess.
I don't, yeah, it was.
Rhymes,
But our sweat included 5 rounds, and each round was about 10 to 15 minutes. But
They got longer as you went. About 3, maybe 4 hours in total.
camps like that.
But each round, we incorporated a prayer. So the first round, we prayed for ourselves. The second round, we prayed for ourselves and other people around us who influenced our lives. The third round, we had special requests, so anything that you wanted to pray about, we did. The fourth round, we prayed for EMTs and police officers and anyone in the service or veterans. And then the fifth round was called the warrior round, and I did not participate in the fifth round, but I was told that it was just a relaxing round and they sang songs. But when Melissa was in the sweat lodge, we had rocks in the center that were on the fire. They sat for probably 2 hours to get hot enough, and these rocks were like on fire, really hot rocks. And Melissa referred to them as grandfather rocks. And while we were in the sweat lodge, she would take sage, she would sprinkle it in water and then put the water on top of the rocks, which would build up the steam and make it really hot in there. And then we also had cedar, and Vanessa was in charge of the cedar in our sweat lodge. We used the cedar, we put it on the rocks, and we used it like as a prayer to help guide our prayers.
The sweat lodge was really about like self-reflecting. So there's a reason why what happens in the sweat lodge stays there. It was really like a super emotional experience. Like you would have to be in there to really know what it's about. So it was great. Probably my favorite part of the trip, honestly.
Alright, so I guess I'm in charge of from the male perspective. So I'm going to start with the origin of the sweat, at least what Mr. Kaitoni told us. He gave us, in his words, like the summary of the summary, because it's a very long, complicated story. So, in the Navajo mythology, I guess, there are these two significant figures that they call the hero twins. That they did a lot of monster fighting, I guess, as far as monsters go in Navajo mythology. But at one point, one of their quests was to find their father, and when they found the man that claimed to be their father, he didn't really acknowledge them unless they proved to him that they were like true Navajo men. So to do that, they had to survive. Take part in, better word, 5 rounds in a sweat. So they had to build it and prepare it and go through it. And when they did that, he accepted them as his sons. So it's highly significant. Like Ashley mentioned, it's kind of the male coming of age ceremony for Navajos as compared to the female, which is something called a canalda, which happens whenever their first period occurs, and it's significantly different. Yeah. Like there's ceremonial attire, and running is an important part. Like it is.
Yep.
It is.
You want to say it?
No, it's
Okay, fine.
I know that Melissa talked about it briefly because her daughter is ready to come of age, and she said they have to prepare meals, they have to get up early, and they have to bathe themselves, get up early with wet hair, and go for a run in the cold. Usually it's in the cold, and then they have to stay up all night. So usually somebody will volunteer to stay up with them and try to keep them up.
Back to this. Alright, so like ours was a dry sweat. I think the only difference was how Ashley said that Melissa would pour the water in periodically and it would like steam up. That didn't occur. The rocks were in like the far corner near the entrance, and they were like around a bucket of water, which also had the sage in it because the sage is kind of important to the ceremonial aspect. But it was just kind of a bucket of boiling water to create a lot of heat, and the rocks also had to go through the like 2-hour on the fire prep period thing. So there were 5 rounds, but Mr. Kaitoni mentioned that in their culture it's bad luck to end on an odd number when it comes to the sweat lodge. So the guys actually did a 6th round if we wanted to. I didn't do it, and Trevor returned to his outhouse.
Noting the outhouse.
But, so 5 was the max, but it varies. Like Mr. Capitani said, he did 8 months. That's what I'm done with this.
And then we're just, if we have time or if you guys have questions, we're just gonna kind of reflect on what we learned and how it had changed us. So if you just wanna, more so just pictures, but then if anybody wants to ask questions.
So I want to start by saying that these students did a phenomenal job. Corinne and I, as the group leaders, were, while they were shoveling sheep poop and building outhouses, they were not, I don't know a time that they were negative at all. They all were incredibly positive throughout the whole week. Service learning trips with Amazaji they're not easy feats. It's work, it's physical labor, and the students did it without any qualms or any issues. So we were incredibly proud of them and all their work. So I want to give them a huge round of applause.